let's go ahead and get started. All right, our homework review. And if you remember, we were a little bit out of sync for the last couple of weeks, but hopefully this review from 2 weeks ago is starting to become a regular part of your schedule. You're getting more familiar with the tools in your toolbox, which are the forms and paperwork created by your local board of realtors. All right, today we're going to talk about time management. Now, today's training literally changed my life as a real estate agent. I'm going to tell you a story, and it'll come into play all throughout the training. But there was a time when I was doing pretty good volume. You know, not huge. I never did huge volume because I've got my priorities, you know, things that I've taught you guys about where family and other things were important to me. But I was doing a pretty good volume, but I was working probably 70 hours a week, which was, in real honesty, kind of in conflict with some of my values. To the point that my wife came to me and kind of drew a line in the sand. And she said, this isn't working for us. You're gone all the time. You take calls in the middle of dinner. And I don't know if you guys have experienced any of these types of things. You know, you miss the kids' soccer games. We make a lot of sacrifices in the business of real estate. Some of those sacrifices probably shouldn't be made. And so when my wife came to me and she said, this isn't working for our family. You've got to get some control over this. I took a hard look at it, and that's the result, or the result of that is this training today. Because I actually hadn't been taught any of this stuff. I kind of just experimented it because I've been given this hard line that my wife didn't want me to cross. You know, you need to establish some boundaries, start spending time with the kids and with me. Because it was challenging. We had a young family, little babies, and I wasn't there. So that's kind of where this training came from. So I'll show you how that kind of played out as we go through today. But I want to start with this little chart. As we're talking about time management, you have to realize what your time is worth, or maybe have a goal for what your time should be worth. And that will start to help you act a little bit differently, I hope, throughout your day, okay? I have agents come to me occasionally that are on their way out of business, and they say, you know what, my wife has just, I'm thinking of one particular situation where he came and said, my wife has said I have to go get a real job. And I said, okay, what kind of real job are you looking at? And he told me it was a salaried position around $40,000, $45,000 a year. And I said, I'm pretty confident we can help you beat that with real estate. Tell me what it is you're doing in real estate. So he outlined his day. You know, he'd start around 10 o'clock in the morning, get in a good couple hours of work, then he'd take a lunch break, then he'd pick kids up from school about 2:30, and then it just got busy for the rest of the day, and he wasn't able to get a lot of work done. So I said, all right, we got 10 to noon, then we got a lunch break, then we got from 1 to 2:30, so about 3.5 hours a day. He says, yeah, that's about it, and he considered himself a full-time agent. So I want to talk to you really quick about the value of time. When I graduated from college, my first job, a managerial position, put me right about here, $50,000 a year. And on a 40-hour work week, that would have been a $24 an hour position. It was a managerial position, though, and the truth was I was working closer to 80 hours a week because that's what they did to management at the time. So I was probably earning about $12 an hour. It was rough, okay? But that's what a lot of people can expect. You get out of school, $50,000. Now, by the way, that's just a little bit higher than the national average for a real estate agent. They're about in the mid-40s for an average real estate agent, okay? Now, we don't want to be average. And when we take that average, honestly, the top 10% are making a lot more than that, and then the bottom 80% are making a lot less than that. Really, the bottom 80% are probably closer to 5,000 or something. So let's say, and in my training, I want you to get you up to 100,000. In my opinion, if you're at 100,000, it's a pretty comfortable lifestyle. At that point, you can choose to get busier. Maybe start bringing on a team, hire an assistant, something like that. but different doors open to you. Okay, and 100,000 is comfortable for one person to do on their own. They don't necessarily need a team to do that. It'll work you full time for sure, but at that point, you can start to consider other options for expanding your business or automating things so that you have a nice quality of life, you're still making a good income, and you can maybe travel a little bit more, whatever. So this is kind of my goal that I focus on with this 12-week training program that I put you guys through. And that would put you close to $50 an hour. Now, I want you to start thinking about this because I have a lot of agents that are part-time. And a lot of them have this goal to be full-time. And they come to me and they say, you know, this is what we're making, $14, $12 an hour, something like that at our real job. And I'm using their language because I consider real estate a real job. But for now, we'll consider it our play job because it's honestly more fun than most of these quote-unquote real jobs. So they come to me and they say, we'd really love to get into real estate full-time, but we kind of have to ease our way into it. And I'm all for that, especially if you have a family depending on you. It's really hard to go cold turkey and cut off that job and just bank everything on real estate. Unless you've got quite a bit of savings piled up, I think it's usually better for people that are part-time to start building real estate, start getting some consistent closings, and then it's easier to let go because you have a fairly good base income. If you've got the right habits, you're having maybe a closing every month. And when you go full-time, you could get that to 2 or 3 closings a month and get up to 100 to 150,000 fairly quickly. So here's what I want you to do. Number one, I want you to start thinking that your time is worth $50 an hour. Now, when you do this, it's going to be harder for you to be that agent of mine that started at 10 o'clock in the morning. When you think, you know, I just spent $50 for that luxury of sitting around in my pajamas for an extra hour, I'm not sure that luxury is worth $50, okay? When you take that 2-hour lunch with the title company, and they're good folks. I love the title companies I work with. They're fun. We do go out to lunch together. But when those lunches stretch to 2 hours, and I start to realize even though they maybe have bought my lunch, that I paid $50 extra for that meal, a total of $100 for the time, maybe it wasn't worth that, okay? I mean, that'd have to be a pretty good meal to be worth an extra $50. When my wife asks me, can you just pick the kids up from school today? And I calculate that that cuts my workday short by about an hour and a half, and that's a $75 cost. Maybe we can come up with another solution. You know, I mean, granted, to all of these things I'm telling you, sometimes there's times you have to do it. You go pick up the kids from school. There's an emergency, something happens, and that's the beauty of being self-employed. But if that kind of thing is happening every day and it's robbing you of your ability to actually work your job, then that's a serious red flag. And you need to sit down with your wife with a chart like this and say, you know, I'm picking up the kids every day, and that's costing us $75 a day because I'm averaging $100,000 a year in income, or that's the goal. And so that time is $75. That's an expensive ride to get the kids. Let's make them ride the bus or something. Another thing that I want to point out to you in this chart is most of us can easily identify 1 hour a day that's probably wasted, okay? And it could be with things like YouTube or Facebook, or maybe it's just a late start, or maybe, I don't know, we like to golf, and I know that I'm getting into sacred territory for a lot of us because that seems to be the realtor's thing. But if we can identify 1 hour a day that is wasted time, I'm not saying increase your hours. I'm just saying if you worked a full 8-hour day, you know, you started at 9 and you ended at 6 with an hour lunch in between, you actually gave yourself an honest 8 hours rather than, you know, like that agent who considered himself full-time, 10 to noon, another hour and a half, run some kids around, do some other stuff. You get to the end of the day, you're still tired, but you only worked 3.5 hours. So if we could identify at least 1 hour a day that was wasted time, at this range, we give ourselves a $12,000 raise for the year. Now, that's big money. Now, I don't know if you realize what that is in the real world, the rest of the world with the real jobs, but in order for people to get a $12,000 raise, I remember when my dad, in order to get a $5,000 annual raise, he had to go back to college, get a master's degree. He was a teacher, and so in order for him to do that, we actually had to move closer to the university. So he changed schools that he was teaching at, sold a place that he really enjoyed, because we grew up in farm country in Malad, Idaho. Surrounded by farms, we lived on almost an acre ourselves, and my dad loved that. He grew up as a farm boy, and he loved that. So we moved to a quarter-acre lot, almost doubled our debt, in order for him to go back to school while he worked a full-time job with 5 children, going to school in the nights for 2 or 3 years in order to get a master's degree and get a $5,000 a year raise. I remember my first raise. It was a 25-cent raise, and that was at a a little restaurant up at the university, up at Utah State University. I was so proud of that 25-cent raise. And I talk to people now, and that's still what kids are getting. They work really hard. They get a 25-cent per hour raise. Adults, maybe a $5,000 a year raise. That's a big deal. That's party time, okay? I'm talking right here. You don't have to work extra hours. You just have to recapture the time that's being stolen from you because maybe you don't realize how valuable it is. And if you're losing 1 hour a day, instead of putting in an 8-hour day, you're doing 7, that's a $12,000 raise for you to find that and eliminate it. If you're doing 2 hours that you're losing for various things, $25,000 a year you could be adding to your, that's a brand new car every year by simply putting in an honest day's work for your job. And I know when I go to work, my wife expects me to go to work, right? I mean, she's working hard at home. She's taking care of things at home. She doesn't want me to go to work and screw around. I need to be doing my job. So how do we give ourselves a raise in this business? Let's say I'm doing 1 transaction a month. That's enough for my family to get by. It's not great, but it gives me about $50,000 a year, the average real estate earnings, okay? I'm working a full 40 hours a week, so 160 hours a month gives me about 28 bucks an hour. Now, to give myself a raise, I don't have to get an extra, I don't have to attend CE classes. I don't need a special designation behind my name. I don't need to kiss ass for anybody, excuse the French, but there's no politics that I have to do. All I have to do, to be completely honest, is recapture my own time. I have to maybe systemize a few things, create some systems that will allow me to focus more on the things that are more productive for me, but I need to identify the time wasters. When I do that, I go to 2 transactions a month, which doubles my income. And in the real world with those real jobs, there is nothing you can do to all of a sudden double your income, okay? They don't give raises like that, but in real estate we do. We give raises like that. And you don't have to work any more hours, but all of a sudden you're making $56 an hour and over $100,000 a year. That's a great work plan, isn't it? I mean, if you were in that real job and somebody came to you and they said, hey, I've got a work plan for you. You don't have to work any more hours. We're going to double your salary. Who wouldn't jump on that? I think everybody would. How do we do that? Here's the key. A long time ago, and this is going back probably over a decade now, I was a new broker. I had some agents in my office. Pretty cool guys, a couple guys. They were cousins with each other, so they worked together a lot. And they went to this seminar. And at the seminar, the trainer said to them, realtors should never discount their commissions. Now, I'm not saying you should either, but this is what the trainer said. Realtors should never discount their commissions. You guys are professionals, okay? Think of the other professionals out there, and he compared us to doctors and lawyers. Can you imagine going into a doctor's office and he says, you need to have surgery right now, and you said, all right, I'll do it with you if you cut your surgery to half price, okay? And you guys have probably heard this analogy somewhere from some trainer. It's fairly common. It's been out there for a while. So you tell the doctor, I'll do your surgery, but I'm only going to pay you half of what you charge. And that idea seems ludicrous. That just doesn't happen. Okay? And so the trainer's point was, you guys are professionals. You should never discount your commissions because you have the earning capacity, the same as a doctor or a lawyer does. And that's very true. Real estate agents, we've got realtors in our own company that make probably more than 90% of the doctors out there. All right? You can make a lot of money in real estate. That's true. However, those agents left that training and they came back and they told me about it and they're super excited. And I'd seen trainings like this before. And they're super excited and they were both out of business within about a year. Now, is the moral of this story that you should discount your commissions? No, that's not it, because I don't discount mine most of the time. You know, I'll occasionally offer a deal to somebody if they're going to list and buy their home with me and they sign both agreements that night. I'll offer a discount most of the time. But otherwise, I don't like to discount either. And there's been times where I've charged 7% on my listings. So I'm not encouraging you to discount your listings, but why did these guys go out of business? After this seminar, and they came back real excited, what happened? Well, here's the thing. How do we become professional? This guy, the speaker on the stage, says, you guys are professionals. By him saying that, does that make us professionals? Does he have a magic wand? Is he Voldemort or something? I guess Voldemort's the bad guy. Can't remember the name of the good guy. Harry Potter. Are they waving a magic wand and all of a sudden we're professionals? How do we get other people to treat us professionally? Because these guys went out, they started going on their appointments, they were hard-nosed, making demands of people. People didn't buy it. Okay? So how do we become a professional and how do we get other people to treat us professionally? You've probably heard this quote, whoe'er thou art, act well thy part. So how do we become professional and get others to treat us that way? We need to start acting like a professional. Okay? This was a quote I got out of a training that I went to when I was 8 months in the business and facing a real difficult time. Living on credit cards, young family to support, not making, I closed like 3 deals in 8 months, which my broker thought was fantastic, and I thought, okay, if that's better than average, I'm still broke. So something's got to change. I went to a 2-day seminar, put it on a credit card, did it with one of our other brokers, Kurt Buckley. We went there together, and I got this quote, work when you're working and play when you're playing. And that stuck with me. It struck a chord. Okay? And it talks about balance there. So, for example, if I say I work from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., I need to actually work. But after 6 p.m., I need to be with my family. I need to have some balance there. Okay? So when I got that, I started to act a little bit differently. So let's talk a little bit about, I'm going to skip this. I'm going to go back to this one. Let's talk a little bit about how do we act like a professional. I want you to pick a business that you respect, a business model that you respect, and I'm going to pick Walmart. Okay? A lot of people hate Walmart. I don't care. They sold the cheapest diapers in town, and I got 5 kids. So I'm a big fan of Walmart. I actually used to manage there. That was where I worked my 80 hours a week. I was an assistant store manager, and it was a good job, even working 80 hours a week. Most holidays, yeah, I didn't like that part, but I respected the company. They ran their company really well, and I don't think you can deny that, whether you like them or not. They're good in business. They make a lot of money, okay? So a couple things about them from an insider's perspective, okay? As a Walmart manager, if I didn't open the store on time, see, Bentonville, Arkansas is corporate headquarters, all right? If I wanted to change the temperature in the store, I was an assistant manager at the Park City store. If I wanted to change the temperature, because it got very cold sometimes in the winters, and I wanted to increase that, that's a really big store, and it's actually very expensive to increase the temperature in the store. we didn't have a little knob on the wall we could go change. We actually had to call Bentonville, Arkansas, and get them to change it. Okay, they controlled that. So that's kind of the level of control Walmart has. They keep very tight controls on how things happen in their stores. So if the doors didn't open on time, this was back before they had the 24/7 stores. If the doors didn't open at opening time, they knew it at corporate. Okay? So we had to open on time, we had to close on time. Occasionally, we would go out. They would take 4 or 5 managers from one store, and they would send us to a store a couple hours away where hopefully people didn't know us, and they would charge us with shoplifting. Okay, so that was our job. We would go through and try to shoplift. We had a dozen different ways that we were supposed to do it, from busting out emergency exits to using old receipts to see if people actually checked it. We tried everything that we could to test the store on their responses. Okay, and then of course we'd bring it all back in and talk with the management, and it was kind of a training exercise. Here's the thing. The whole moral of all this story, and I had some fun times there, especially, well, I was crappy at shoplifting. I never got away with anything. But we did have some fun times. But the moral of the story is this. They had systems in place. They tested those systems. If they found flaws in the systems, they got them fixed immediately. If somebody didn't do their job, and it didn't matter how high up the chain they were, it could be the store manager who was making couple $100,000 a year. If he wasn't opening on time, and in fact, there's a story of Mrs. Walton, that's Sam Walton's wife, who Sam Walton, of course, created the company. She would visit stores, and if the bathrooms were dirty, she'd have the store manager himself in there scrubbing floors, or else he could lose his job. I've been in a lot of Walmarts where managers would lose their jobs for that. But regardless, Walmart takes their business seriously. So my question is, if we want to act professional, or we want to be a professional, have other people treat us professionally, are we acting that way? Do we have systems set up? So if I asked all of you guys, what time do you start work in the morning? Could you tell me? Do you have a start time? And if so, do your clients know your start time? Do you have the hours posted? You know how frustrating it would be to go up to a store and they're not open, and you don't see any hours posted on the wall? What would your thought be? Are they out of business? You know, why would their hours not be posted? I want to know when I can get in, when I can do some shopping. You're going to think that store's out of business, right? So are your hours posted? Do your clients know what hours you work? Or do you, like some people, say, I never miss a phone call. Your phone call is my top priority. I pride myself on answering my phone every time. And I've had guys that were literally 80 years old tell me this. I've taken calls at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm thinking, holy crap, are you kidding me? What kind of a life is that? Why would you brag about that? You're not being treated like a professional. You're 80 years old. You've been doing this business for 50 years. And yet you're not a professional. People don't respect you. If they're calling you at 1 in the morning, they don't respect you. There's a problem, okay? And I've got a lot of agents, I'll tell this too, and they're like, man, you're a jerk. You know, we do try to answer our phone. That's important. Guys, if you promise somebody that you're going to answer your phone every time, then 2 things have to take place. Number 1, you have to never go on a listing appointment or a buyer presentation, because that takes about an hour. So if you're going to be answering your phone in the middle of a listing appointment, you're not going to get any business. So number 1, if you're going to promise that, don't ever go on an appointment. And number 2, don't ever sleep, okay? And don't get married and don't have kids, because otherwise, how can you do that? So don't make promises you can't deliver. If I go to 7-Eleven and it says it's open 24/7 but it's locked, I think they're out of business. I don't go to that place anymore. Okay? So make promises that you can keep. How do we become professional? Act like the professional businesses do. Post your hours, work those hours. So every time I meet with clients, I tell them, I typically start at 9 a.m., go to about 6 p.m. at night. After that, my phone's dying. If you call me afterwards, that's great. I'll just return your call first thing the next morning. I work Monday through Saturday. Monday through Friday, I can guarantee an hour-and-a-half callback, okay? Because if I'm in a meeting like this, I'm not answering my phone. Saturdays, I can't guarantee an hour-and-a-half because if I'm out doing yard work, then, you know, I don't hear my phone at all on a lawnmower, and it could take me a little while. But I will promise to return all your calls by the end of the day. And Sundays, I don't turn my phone on at all. That's my day off. Do you have any problems or concerns with that? That is my exact script, and I use that with every agent that I hire on, and I use that with every client that I have, buyers and sellers. I want to make sure that they understand my posted hours. And if they have a problem with it, and very, very rarely we have a problem with that, but sometimes people will say, you know what, Sunday's my day off, and that's when I want to go home shopping. And I'll say, okay, great. I've got a fantastic agent that I'll pair you up with. Okay, because I have agents in my office that do work on Sundays. So for me, that's what works. And 99% of the time, people don't have a problem with it. And if they do have a problem with it, I can refer them to another agent and get paid a referral fee. Okay, I would prefer to do that than bend on certain principles, but that, of course, is up to you guys on what you do and don't do. But I post my hours, and then I work those hours. So if people are calling me at certain times of the day and I'm never responding to them, they're going to start to think, this guy isn't a professional, okay? We've all had that experience with other real estate agents. We call and we're trying to get a response. It's probably the #1 phone call I get from other agents is people complaining about my agents who won't answer the phone. You know, are they gone? Are they on vacation? I don't know. They didn't tell me anything. So this can become a real serious issue, is people don't act like a professional, and yet they want to be treated like one. You know, they go out and demand this professional treatment, but they haven't acted like that, and people will not deliver a professional treatment if you're not acting like a professional. So the question on time management is, of course, are we managing time? No, not really. Time is just going to flow. It's going to be the same for me and you as it is for the guy on the corner with his hat out, or the guy on Wall Street making $5 million a year or whatever. Okay, we all have the same 24 hours a day. The difference is, how do we manage ourselves? Now, when it comes to managing ourselves, there's a lot of things that can cause a system malfunction. Sometimes there's time-consuming activities or clients. We've all had these guys. They're the perpetual drain, calling us 4 times a day, you know, very needy people. We have to have this right now. Those can really cause a system malfunction. They can derail our plans. Sometimes, especially if we're a new agent, trouble with family and friends adjusting to this idea of self-employment. They see us as self-employed, so whenever they get a break, you know, maybe off of work, hey, let's go golfing because you don't work, right? Well, no, I do. Or the example of your spouse saying, hey, you're self-employed, you can just run errands for me, right? Can you run to the store and pick this up? Can you go get the kids? They don't consider you having an actual job. Okay, so that can be a difficult challenge. Sometimes we put off distasteful activities for so long that they cause serious problems. Okay, in the past, I hated paying bills. I don't know why. The thought of paying bills stressed me out so much, I would put it off till the end of the month. I knew I didn't want a 30-day late on my credit, so I always paid them by then, but I always had the 15-day late penalty fees. And at a time when I had multiple houses, you know, I had some rental properties, that became very expensive. It cost $800 or $900 sometimes in late fees. Ridiculous, insane, certainly not professional, because no professional corporation would ever allow that or survive if they allowed that kind of activity to happen. And yet here I was allowing it to happen. And I had to take some drastic steps, retrain myself to become more of a professional and manage my finances better. Okay? Sometimes we put off distasteful activities. For you, that could be getting on the phone. And the problems that arise from that is you got no business and you're going out of business. You're afraid to talk to people. Okay? That has to be overcome. So some of these are system malfunctions, like overwhelmed with paperwork. If you're not organized, if you're not getting yourself trained on .loop, maybe the paperwork just, your desk is covered and you don't know what to do with it. Maybe you're overwhelmed with the learning curve. And I always feel bad for brand new agents because they've gone, in Utah, it's 120 hours of education, and they get out and they're like, I don't think anybody taught me how to do this business. And then I sit down with them and I say, all right, here's our training program, and they start to realize the mountain they still have to climb. There's a big learning curve here. It can be overwhelming. I applaud you guys for taking some time out today, and I hope some of this information helps you. Getting phone calls at all hours of the day and night, that can certainly cause a system malfunction. General feeling of being overwhelmed, yeah, I've had that yesterday. This happens to all of us. So how can we combat these things? I'm going to go back. How can we combat some of these things that will give us a system malfunction? How can we better manage ourselves? Because remember, it's not our time. It's ourselves that we're trying to manage here. And this is the ideal week plan. The ideal week is a concept that you think of your ideal work week, not your ideal week on vacation in Hawaii, your ideal work week, where you're putting in your full time. And for you, that may be 40 hours. To somebody, it may be 60 hours. It's up to you. It's your ideal week. Okay, some people like to work more than others. For some people, their ideal week is 20 hours because they've got another job. Your ideal week is personal, and it's ideal to you. So first thing you need to do, blank sheet of paper. And I would take notes on this or start doing it right now as we're talking, okay? Blank sheet of paper, list some of the important things that need to take place in your ideal week. And if you want to do it for personal things, you can. I've only listed some professional things, okay? But prospecting should definitely be on there. Obviously, you're not going to make money if you're not talking to people. So prospecting should be a component of your ideal work week. Following up on listings and on files that are under contract, making sure that you're not missing important deadlines, etc. If you have assistants, meeting with them, sales meetings or trainings like today, I think those are important. Time for showings. Time for client meetings, responding to phone calls. I'll give you a quick example of this because a lot of things, yeah, we respond to phone calls. That's what we do all day long. Most of the effective trainers, and I've got one broker that's taken this advice. I don't know if any of you guys know Steve Stringham, but if you called him in the morning, his voicemail says, I'll respond to your phone calls after 11 o'clock. That's one of his key times where he gets things done that are most important to him. And then he'll start dealing with other people's problems after 11. So he actually has some set times for responding to phone calls. And if you've ever been in the middle of like writing a paper in college or working on your presentation or something, and you get a phone call and it distracts you, it's another 5 minutes to re-engage your mind. You know, where was my train of thought when I was working on this kind of stuff? And if you're constantly getting distracted like that, it can be hard to accomplish some of those important tasks that you have. Paperwork, managing that, study time, that's important. So there's a lot of things that you can have on here. Maybe you slip in here a regular date night with your spouse, okay? Maybe you slip in here some church activities if that's important to you, special time with your children. Your ideal work week, let's make a list of all the things that would happen in your ideal week. Our next step in helping manage ourselves better is we're going to pull out a calendar. Now, if you notice this one, this was done, well, I had to go like a year previous because I was using Outlook. And so actually it was done on May 26, 2006, so 10 years ago that I printed this one out. I went a couple years earlier in the calendar just to find a free time that didn't have any, it was a blank calendar. And 10 years ago, this was my ideal week. Is it the same today? Not at all. And by the way, when you make your ideal week, it'll probably last you for 1 or 2 weeks tops, and then it will change. And I'll tell you why, okay? This is the point where my wife drew the line in the sand. And she said, we can't do this anymore. This is not what I signed on for. Our family never sees you. We feel like we are the third wheel in a dating relationship, and the main one is you and your job. And I said, you know what, you're right. And I was, at the time, closing, I don't know, 28 transactions, okay? It was the first time in my life I've made over $100,000. I was doing it, had been doing it consistently for just a couple of years. It was fairly new to me, but it was exciting. That was really good money. And so she comes to me and I said, you know what, she's right. I've got my priorities. I've ignored them, which is why, by the way, today I train on affirmations and getting your priorities in place, because I didn't have mine written down at the time, which allowed me to run roughshod over all the things that were important to me. So I was fully prepared. I said, you know what, I can do that. I bet we'll probably go from 100 down to, I don't think it'll cut my income in half, but probably to 60,000. We can get by on 60,000. That's as much as my dad made at the end of an entire career of teaching high school. I can survive on 60,000. Okay, so I was completely prepared to take a pretty significant pay cut to put my family first. So this is the plan I came up with. I'm going to start at 9 a.m. and work till 6 p.m. Now, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I did keep Saturdays open for showings just in case, but Tuesdays and Thursdays were my showing days. And so what I had been doing is somebody would call up and they would say, hey, we just saw this awesome house. Can you come show it to us right now? And I would say, yeah. And I would drop everything and I would run out there. Now, I couldn't do that anymore. I needed to say, yes, I would love to show that to you. Typically, the sellers like a 24-hour notice. Let me give them a call. I'll get it scheduled. How does tomorrow at 6 o'clock sound? Okay, great. That'll work. I'll be there. Now, does that work every time? No, it doesn't. Does it work 95% of the time? For me, yes. In a super busy market like we are now, sometimes you got to get out there right away. But you don't have to drop everything you're doing. Schedule it out a few hours. You're going to be okay. Take care of your important business. Now, I use an offensive term here, but I think it drives the point home. Some of us are real estate hookers, okay? We'll do anything for a buck. Doesn't matter what it is, okay? We'll sacrifice anything that's important to us because we can make that almighty dollar. You're not a professional. People won't treat you as a professional. You'll never get paid as a professional if you are a real estate hooker, okay? Set up your parameters. Set some rules. And always try to get people to conform to your rules. There will be exceptions to that, absolutely. There will be people that say, you know what, I work graveyards Tuesdays and Thursdays, or I work a swing shift, so I'm always working in the evenings. I need to see showings in the morning. Okay, we can do that. All right, we can make exceptions to it, but always try to get people to conform to your plan. And here's what happened. I made this plan and I said, you know what, family's important. Monday's going to be family night. Every Monday, I'm done at 6. I'm going to work with my family. We had a couple young kids, like baby kids, okay? And I said, you know what, my wife is exhausted. I get home, she's been working with these kids all day long. I'm going to give her one day a week on Wednesdays. After 6, she can go out with her friends, she can play, she can shop, whatever she wants to do. Wednesdays after 6, that's her time. Fridays is date night for us. And if I didn't set Fridays aside like that, guess what I was doing on date night? I was showing some other dating couple homes because that was a fun activity for them, wasn't for me or my family. So I said, I'm going to reserve these 3 nights, family, wife night, date night. Saturdays I'm going to keep open for showings, whatever we need to do, okay? I met with my wife and I said, this is my plan. How do you feel about it? And she says, that'll work. I feel pretty good about that if you can stick to it. Now, what that meant was I had to get very focused, okay? I was literally cutting my work week almost in half with this schedule. I was working a lot less than I normally had. And so I had to get very serious and focused with the time that I had. So I printed this out and I taped it right next to my desk so that I could be laser focused. This was one way I trimmed out that hour of wasted time that I had, because I would sit there and I think from 9 to 9:30, I'm going to check emails and phone calls. Okay, that's the part that's cut off there. because I was telling people I'm going to quit answering my phone after 6, but I will respond to you first thing in the morning. So that's what I did. Checked emails and phone calls and then responded to those things for the first hour and a half every day. Fully prepared to take a massive pay reduction. What actually happened? I increased my business by 50%, made more money than I had ever done, closed about 36 transactions in the following year. And ever since then, I've tried to never work more than 50 hours a week. Again, are there exceptions to that? Yeah, but pretty rare. Okay, most of the time I can stay under 50 hours a week and get all my business done. You just have to be a little bit more focused. So if you can use tools like this ideal week, if you can create some systems using a calendar like this, and you can recapture some of that lost time and give yourself a $28 an hour raise and go from the average realtor income of $50,000 up to a more comfortable income of $100,000, what would stop you from doing that? So that's your homework this week. So how do you do this? You've got your list of things that are important. You take a blank calendar, and for me, I had to go back 4 years from 2006 to 2002. I found a blank calendar with 30-minute time slots, and I put everything in there. Stephen Covey has a book out called First Things First, and it's the same concept. You put your most important things in your calendar, then your next most important things, and sure enough, you'll have a little bit time at the end for play, but it's not 8 hours a day for playtime, okay? It's not 6 hours a day of television watching. It might be an hour at the end of the day, but your important things get done. Your job gets done, your family knows they're loved, your kids know they're important, and this is a big part of that. So this absolutely changed my life. It took me from being somebody that would trade everything in, from ignoring my values, to somebody that was actually a professional. I started telling people my hours because for the first time in my career I had to. I had hours. I'd never even had hours before. And I listened to other people's voicemails, other realtors' voicemails, and I just felt sorry for them because they didn't realize that you can actually set professional hours for yourself and people will respect it. Okay? And if you think I lose business from this, I don't. I tell people my hours and they like it. They want to work with a professional. I bet 10 out of 10 times I could go up against a guy that says I work 24/7 and I'd beat him. They don't want to work with somebody like that. Those people aren't professionals. They want to work with a pro. If you don't have any self-respect, you don't care for yourself, you don't care for your family, how can you relate to these people? Because they all care for their families. So anyways, book your slots. Now, I told you that your ideal week will last for a week or two, and that's it. Okay? For example, it was a couple years after that. Obviously, if I was losing $800 or $900 a month in late fees, I was making good money to allow that to happen. It was still sloppy and it was unprofessional of me. My ideal week had to encompass 3 hours on Monday to getting my finances under control. It took me probably a month and a half with 3 hours every week to get my finances under control. I had to call my CPA, find out what software he used. I had to buy the software. I had to train myself on the software. I had to figure out how to link that software up to my banking system, my banking institution, so that they communicated. And then I had to start learning how to file things away, basically being responsible with my finances. And it took me 3 hours every week for probably 5 or 6 weeks. Now it takes me about 15 minutes a month. And so my ideal week obviously wouldn't include that information. At this point in time, I was a new agent. I had an hour scheduled in every day for study. I was doing trainings every day for an hour and a half. I had a dream of doing an hour and a half lunch. That got trimmed down to a half hour after 1 week. So some of you that have problems with paperwork, your desk is covered with paperwork and you feel disorganized, I was that way. I had an hour every day to get my stuff organized. Guess how much time I spend on that now? 15 minutes maybe. I get to the end of the day, I've got my list that I've kept my notes on, that AMP form that I've shared with you guys. I put those notes into the computer, I'm good to go. Got my paperwork organized. I've learned how to use .loop. What that does is all of a sudden I don't have an hour a day for paperwork. Okay? I still do client follow-up stuff. I don't have to study for an hour. I can study for 15 minutes. I've read the forms. I know my stuff, but I need to keep sharpening the saw. So I spend a little bit of time every day studying. Don't have to do trainings for an hour and a half every day. Certainly don't take an hour and a half lunch every day. That frees up right there about 3 or 4 hours in which I can do more productive things. But at one time, this was my ideal week, and following this helped me well exceed $100,000 a year. Okay? So when I can clear up 3 or 4 hours extra time for marketing, that really opens doors for you. So how do you become a master of yourself? Not really time management, it's a master of yourself. You got 3 steps. Number 1, set goals. And we've talked about this a lot in the last few weeks. Okay? We've talked about having affirmations. Last week we talked about having SMART goals, applying that SMART acronym to each of your goals. This gives you the direction so that you can stay focused. You can have that laser focus, you can know what it is you need to be doing. Next, you plan every day, week, and month in advance. And if you're using those forms that I've shared with you, then you're making that happen. Okay? That again helps you take the focus from your goals and actually put it down. As we described last week, you're assigning these tasks to the worker bee that just doesn't question, he goes and gets it done. So you take your time every morning to plan, and then you just go get it done. And then lastly, you evaluate. And again, our AM form has a spot at the end for a success journal. I've counseled you to take 3 good things that you did that day in your success journal and one thing that you feel like you need improvement on. Okay? Evaluate, measure your progress, and adjust as needed. To me, this is the key to becoming a master of yourself. Know the direction you're going, make a plan on how to get there, and after you execute that plan, go back and evaluate. Did your plan work? Do we need to adjust the plan? Do we make some changes? Don't wait for a year where you can't pay your bills and then come to me and say, I don't know why, it's just not working for me. You should know why within a week. Okay? If you're not getting your goals, you should know why by the end of that week. You should be tweaking things. You should be making constant adjustments. Well, maybe it's this. Maybe my presentation needs to be a little bit smoother. And so you go and you watch some videos or you talk to your broker, you clean up your presentation. Next week you deliver that. Did it work? Did it help your problems? If not, make some other tweaks and adjustments. But you should never get to the end of a year being broke, facing bankruptcy or foreclosure, and come and say, I don't know why, but real estate isn't working for me. To me, that is a complete abandonment of being a professional. Professionals, I mean, even on a very basic level, if you've ever worked as a cashier, they count their till out every night. If they're missing a nickel, they find it. Okay? You don't get off in your till. If you guys have worked as cashiers, you can vouch for that. If your till is off, there's trouble. Okay? That's an evaluation at the end of the day. Businesses do that. Professionals do that. Are you a professional? And if not, becoming one. Okay? Take your blank calendar, fill in the slots, literally print it out, tape it next to your desk, and every day glance over and say, what should I be doing this hour, and then do it. Give yourself some clear instructions. It creates a system for you where you can stay laser focused. When you do that, you can make yourself a really great raise. You can give yourself a really good income raise. All right, so here's your homework. Your ideal week list, remember, that's just a blank piece of paper with all the important things that you should be doing in your ideal work week. Put that into your calendar guide. Schedule 15 minutes each morning to plan. Have your goals in front of you, your affirmations, that's your objective, and then plan out solid, achievable steps towards that objective. And then at the end of each day, plan 15 minutes to record in your journal. Okay? 3 great things you did, number 1 area to improve. Thanks, guys, for taking some time to join me today. I hope this training today helps you. If you put it into play, I guarantee it will. There's fun things that happen when you start working with an ideal week and you have a plan in front of you. You guys have a great week. I will see you online next week, and best of luck to you all. Bye-bye.